What's up, everybody, and welcome back to the Oak Tree Football Channel, and welcome to another 2021 NFL Draft video. I've done one video on the NFL Draft, the 2021 NFL Draft so far, and today I'll be doing another one. The other one I already did was a mock draft. Today I'll be doing my rankings on offense, every player, or every position. I'll be giving my top 5 at that position for this draft class. And just before we get into the video, I want to say that this is not currently how I would rank these players, and this is not how I think they'll be. This is not the order I think they'll be taken in the draft. This is the order I think that we will see these players ranked in at the draft. So it depends on how good a player will play this season in college football. Of course, the college football season probably will, at this point, I feel like it's not really going to be like a normal college football season. So we might not see many smaller players come out of nowhere like Joe Burrow. But we will see. So I think it's going to be more players that have done well in the past that are going to be taken earlier. That's what I think. But anyway, let's get into this. So starting at the quarterback position, at number 5, I have Texas A&M quarterback Kellen Mond. Right now, Kellen Mond is not in my 5th position, and he would be probably a few spots lower than this. But just heading into next year's draft, I do think Kellen Mond will be the 5th best quarterback in the draft, just because I think he's due to have a really good season for Texas A&M. I nearly put Brock Purdy in the spot, and currently I would have Brock Purdy as number 5. Kyle Trask was almost in this spot as well. So there was a few players I was considering putting here. Also, if Tanner Morgan has a good season, I could see him being potentially the 5th best in the draft. But I decided on Kellen Mond because I think Texas A&M will be a very, very good team in college football this season, and I think Kellen Mond will have his best year. Did not have a good season this past year. He had a worse year than the year, and he had a worse year in 2019 than I did in 2018. But I do expect to see improvement. I expect to see a lot of improvement, and I think he will be a top 5 quarterback for next year's draft. I could see him even being considered as a first-round quarterback. But right now, I would say probably early second round. That would be what I think. At number 4, this one was really, really tough for me. It was really hard to decide. I just want to say that before I do it. But at number 4, I have Trey Lance, the North Dakota State quarterback. This is one of the hardest quarterbacks to really place or predict what will happen with him in this draft class, because he is playing at a FCS school in North Dakota State. But he is so talented. He's unbelievably talented, and we have seen North Dakota State quarterbacks be taken high. The example of that, of course, is Carson Wentz being second in the draft a few years ago. And I think we could see the same thing with Trey Lance this season. Right now, Trey Lance is my 3rd best quarterback, but just heading into the draft, I think one player will jump over him, which I'll talk about in a second. But Trey Lance, really good quarterback. So he's just a great player all around. And in another year, if this was not, I just want to say, great quarterback class. Really, really good quarterback class. Better than last year, or better than this year, better than last year. It's a great quarterback class. Multiple top-tier quarterbacks. And if this was another year, I could see Trey Lance being the first pick in the draft. But because it's this year, or at least the first quarterback in the draft, but because it's this year, and there are so many good quarterbacks, I don't think he'll be the number 1 quarterback. I could see him being number 3, or the 3rd quarterback taken off the board, maybe even the 2nd, but I can't see him being first. So if you look at his stats, 42 touchdowns, 0 interceptions total. And when you look at his 0 interceptions, you kind of got to think that it's just luck, right? No, he's an unbelievable decision maker, has a great arm, is accurate on deep throws. He's an unbelievable runner. He's hard to tackle. He's all around a great player. There are some things that aren't great about his game, but they are all things that can be improved. He's a really good prospect, and he could be a franchise quarterback for some team. And I do think he will be a first-round quarterback in next year's draft. At number 3, the player who I think will jump over Trey Lance, I have Jamie Newman. So right now, like I said, Jamie Newman is my 4th quarterback behind Trey Lance. But I do think that he will have a really good season with Georgia, and I do think he will possibly be in Heisman contention. He was very good for Wake Forest this past year, and now he's transferring to Georgia. Better coaches, better players around him. I expect a great season from him, and I do think he will be one of the top quarterback recruits next year. I could see Trey Lance being taken ahead of him. I could even see him potentially being the second quarterback off the board. He's very talented. He could be a very good player in the draft. But I do have him at third because there's two really good quarterbacks. But I expect a big season from him. I think he can be in the Heisman race. I think he can take Georgia to the college football playoff probably. And I expect a really good season from Jamie Newman. So that's why I have him at number 3. So now on to my number 2 quarterback in the draft. I have Justin Fields, and I know a lot of people will have Justin Fields as the number 1 quarterback in this draft, and I definitely could agree with that. I just think there are some problems with his game that there aren't with the person I have at number 1, who you probably know at this point. But Justin Fields had a great season in his first year as a starter for Ohio State, and I think he can have another great year this season. I think Ohio State will be one of the best teams in college football once again, and I think Justin Fields will be a huge part of that. I think he can be more of a runner this season. They didn't use him as much as I would have expected him to be as a runner. I think they can use him more as a runner this season. And he will probably improve as a passer as well. So I could definitely have him being 1 in this class. There are just some things that you see from him that you wouldn't really want to see from an NFL quarterback. But those could definitely improve, and he could definitely be the number 1 quarterback here. But at number 1, you guys probably know, it's Trevor Lawrence. Trevor Lawrence is a great quarterback for Clemson. He's only lost 1 game in his career. He's 6'6". He's tall. And he's just a great all-around player. He leads Clemson to wins. He can throw touchdown passes. He does not have that many turnovers. Great player. And I do think he will be the first pick in next year's draft. There's potential he could have even been the first pick in this year's draft. I don't think he would have been the first pick, but I could definitely see him being the second quarterback if he was eligible. Because he's just that good. And I do think he'll have another good season, and I think this could be the year when he wins the Heisman Trophy. I think he could take his team back to the national championship game for the 3rd year in a row. It's a really good team for Clemson, and a huge part of that is Trevor Lawrence. And I think Trevor Lawrence, his success in college football can translate to the NFL. And I think Trevor Lawrence will be a guy that people want to have on their team. I think he can be a guy that can be a franchise quarterback someday in the NFL. So those are my top 5 quarterbacks. Moving on to the running back position, at number 5, I have C.J. Verdell. I really, really like C.J. Verdell a bit more than most people. I think he's going to have a really big season this year, especially now with Justin Herbert gone from Oregon. I think he can have his biggest year. And we've seen some glimpses of him being a really good running back, but we've also seen some parts of his game that aren't really what you would want from a good running back, and he's a good running back. He's a really, really good running back. I do think so, but there is a lot of improvement to be needed before he can really be called a first-round talent running back or a starting caliber running back in the NFL. I'm not saying that he will never be a starting caliber running back in the NFL. I'm just saying there needs to be improvement before that can be the case. He is 5'9", so a bit shorter than you would like, but I still think that he should be a very good prospect heading into next year's draft. At number 4, I have Washington State running back Max Borghi. Max Borghi, I think, is going to have a really good year. He's already a really good running back, and I think he could be even higher on this list, potentially even 3rd, and I could see him being possibly considered to be a first-round talent running back. I'm just not sure if he would go in the first round because there's not many teams that I think will need a running back. But I think he, with a good season, he would be worthy of a first-round pick, and he can be a really good running back in the NFL. He'll probably start off as a good backup, but I think he can eventually develop into being a good starter for whoever he gets drafted by. He can catch, he can run. He's a very good player for Washington State, and he should have a good year. And he should be ranks pretty high on teams' draft boards, I think. And then at number 3, I have Alabama running back Najee Harris. It was a bit questionable that he did not go to the NFL this season. I think it's because he wants more carries, and I could see him getting that. But also I could see Alabama relying on their starting quarterback to just throw a lot more than I think Najee Harris would like. I mean, Najee Harris can be a receiver as well. But he is a running back at the end of the day, and he is a very, very talented running back. But I think he could have been drafted higher, maybe at this year's draft, than he would have at next year's. But I still think he is one of the best running backs in the draft. And I think he could be. You could call him a first round talent, but for me, he's a second round talent. But I could see a team using a first round pick on him. But I would say he's a second round talent. But still, great running back. Should become a good player. I think he should have a good year for Alabama, and I think he should be a pretty good player as an NFL running back. And I think he will. A lot of teams will want him because he's going to be a good value pick in the second round. So now on to my number 2 running back. Before we do that one, I just want to say that it was really tough for me to decide who should be number 2 and who should be number 1. It's similar to Justin Fields and Trevor Lawrence, both great players, and both could make an argument to be the number 1 player at their position. But at the number 2 running back, I have Oklahoma State running back Chuba Hubbard. Hubbard is an unbelievable player, and he really is a great talent. He's super fast, really fast, 6 foot tall, which is the height you would want from a pretty good NFL running back. He is elusive, he's speedy. He had an unbelievable season for Oklahoma State, and I think he will have another really good season. I think they'll use him a lot in their offense, continue to use him there, and I think he can be a really good running back in the NFL. In my mock draft, I had him going to the Chargers, which I think would be a really good fit for him. I'm not sure if that's where he's going to go, but I think that would be a really good fit for him. So he's a great player, and he should definitely be high on teams' draft boards, and he should be a player that you can expect to hear their name called in the first round because he is a first-round talent. There's just not many teams that I think will need a running back, so he might not go in the first round, but he is worth a first-round pick. I do think so. And I could have him as the number 1 running back in the draft, but at number 1, I have Travis Etienne. Etienne decided to stay in college, which was a bit surprising because I think he could have been the first running back off the board. But I think he'll have another great season. He's been putting up great numbers for the past few years. 49 touchdowns in the last 2 seasons is just unheard of. And he's a really good running back. And I do think he'll be the first one off the board at this year's draft. And I think he'll be a first-round pick because even though I don't think there are many teams that would need a running back that high, I do think there are a few. And I think that they would want to have Travis Etienne on their team just because he's a game changer. He's speedy. He can make receptions. He can, of course, run with the ball. He is a guy you want to have on your team. He's a game changer, and he should immediately be. He should immediately make an impact for an NFL team. It's just his speed from immediately. He's so fast, from 0 to 100 in literally a second. Unbelievable player. So now on to receivers. I just want to say, before I get into the receivers, it was very tough to decide. Receivers was probably the toughest to decide of all the positions on this list, because this receiver class this year was regarded as one of the best receiving classes we've seen in recent history. I think next year's receiving class is better. There is so much talent in the receiving class, and I only listed 5, but I could have listed 10 or even more than that. And so at the 5th receiver, I have Jaylen Waddle out of Alabama. I think Jaylen Waddle is going to have a really big season this year, especially with Jerry Jeudy and Henry Ruggs both being taken in the NFL draft. I think he can have a really good year. And I was really considering if he should be on this list or not, but in the end I decided he should be because he really is a game changer. Speed, unbelievable speed, and I do think because of that speed, he could be possibly a 3rd, maybe even the 2nd receiver taken off the board because we've seen teams reach for speed before. An example being this year in real life, where the Raiders took Henry Ruggs over the likes of Jerry Jeudy and CeeDee Lamb. But even with that being said, Jaylen Waddle still is a great player. I was really considering putting Rondale Moore in the spot. Rondale Moore from Purdue is going to have a big season. I think he's a player you want to have on your team, and he can really do a lot for your offense. But I decided to put Jaylen Waddle on just because he can be a game changer with his speed. He can return kicks, of course, and I think whoever gets him should be happy, and I think he's worth a first-round pick. I think there's probably at least 6 receivers here that are worth a first-round pick. But next up at number 4, I have Rashod Bateman. I really like Rashod Bateman coming out of Minnesota. He was really, with Tyler Johnson, he was one of the best receivers. Tyler Johnson and Rashod Bateman was a really good duo, but I think you can make an argument that Rashod Bateman was better than Tyler Johnson, and honestly, I think he was. I think he's going to have a really big season now that Tanner Morgan has emerged as a good quarterback, and that he will be the number 1 receiver. There will not be another Tyler Johnson that will kind of also be the number 1 receiver. He will be the number 1 receiver, and he should make a lot of receptions this season, which of course means a lot of yards and probably a lot of touchdowns as well. Rashod Bateman is a name to look out for. It's not the most known name in college football, but I think by the end of the season it should be a name to look out for, and he should be a player that is taken fairly high at the NFL draft. At number 3, I have Devonta Smith. Devonta Smith is also, just like Jaylen Waddle, from Alabama, and he also, like Jaylen Waddle, is a game changer. Not as speedy as Waddle, but he is still a great receiver. Even with Jerry Jeudy and Henry Ruggs on the team, he still actually led Alabama with receiving yards this past year, and I think he will do that again. I think he can be one of the highest wide receivers picks in the draft. He's really good player. And he's a reliable guy. He's a guy that teams can rely on. And I think he will be relied on this season for Alabama. And I think he will have a really good year. I think he could improve from last season, even though Tua won't be his quarterback anymore. Mac Jones is still good. I think he will improve now that he really is the number 1 receiver. Even though I think he will be the number 1 receiver, and I do think he will get a lot of playing time and a lot of receptions. Even though Jaylen Waddle is still on the team, I do think he will be the number 1 receiver. I do think he's the better receiver. So yeah. And then at number 2, this is a really good player at number 2. But he couldn't be a number 1, which you'll see in a second. But at number 2, Justyn Ross. I think Justyn Ross is due for a big year for Clemson. He's been good for Clemson, but he just hasn't been great for Clemson yet. But I think this is the year he will be great for Clemson, just because he will now be the number 1 receiver. I think Trevor Lawrence will have his best season. I think he'll be a Heisman contender, and Justyn Ross will probably be his favorite target. Justyn Ross, I think, will make a lot of receptions this year, and he's speedy. He can make players miss. He's elusive. Really good wide receiver. And I could see him. You could argue that he should be the number 1 receiver in this class, and you could argue that he will be the first receiver taken in this draft. And I agree with that. I think he definitely could be because he is a great player. I just think there is a better receiver, and you guys probably know who that receiver is. It is Ja'Marr Chase out of LSU. Ja'Marr Chase is coming off an unbelievable season, one of the best seasons by a wide receiver we've really seen in a while. His numbers were just crazy, and there will be regression this season without some important players and coaches, most notably Joe Burrow and Joe Brady, both gone. But he should still be a really good receiver, and I think he will be regarded as one of the best for this draft class. He's so talented, and I do think he could be worth a top 5 pick of the draft, honestly. I think he's a top 5 player at the draft. He's so talented. I think there's going to be a bit of regression, definitely, and some people might not have him as high on their boards as they would have if he could have gone to the draft this past year. But he should still be regarded by many as the best receiver in the draft, and he is by me. So now moving on to tight ends. I'm not going to talk much about the tight ends. I'll just say a little bit about them. But last year, or in this year's draft, there was not really anybody that you would really want to use high draft capital on, I think, for tight ends. Next year, though, there are some really good tight ends that are worth first-round picks. I think there's 3 tight ends that are worth first-round picks, which I'll talk about in a minute. But at number 5, I have Charlie Kolar. He's going to be Iowa State's offense, I think, can be very good this season, and Kolar's going to be a big part of that. He's going to be a piece that Brock Purdy can rely on, Brock Purdy can throw to. And I mean, Like I said, I'm not going to talk much about the tight ends, but he will be someone that makes a lot of receptions this year. He will be a player that will be, I think, ranked highly for this draft, and I think he could be a second or third round pick. I'm not sure about first, but he is a very good prospect. He's an intriguing prospect, and I think he could be a really good player. He's 6'6", which is what you want from a tight end. So he looks really good on paper, and I think he can be really good, like he has been. He has been very good for Iowa State at number 4, and I nearly put this player at number 5. Switch him up with Charlie Kolar, but in the end, I decided to have him 4. It's Matt Bushman from BYU. Matt Bushman is a very, very good tight end, and he is definitely worth a second or third round pick, I do think. And I could see possibly a team using a first round pick on him, but for me, I do have him as a second or third round pick, but it would be good value to get him in those positions. He's just a really, really talented player out of BYU. He's one of their more talented players on their offense. He can really do what you want him to do. And Bushman should be a top tight end prospect for next year's draft. At number 3, I have Brevin Jordan. So earlier I said there was 3 tight ends I think are worth a first-round pick. Brevin Jordan is one of them. Honestly, I could see Brevin Jordan being ranked by some as the number 1 tight end in this draft. I just think that there's some 2 more that are better than him. But that does not mean I think Brevin Jordan's a bad player. Brevin Jordan is what you want from a tight end. He is a bit shorter than some other tight ends, but 6'3" is still tall. And he's a really, really good tight end. And I think people will be happy to actually have him on their team because I think he might be a second-round pick, even though I think he could be worth a first-round pick. That would be great value. He's a player that I think can make an immediate impact before he ever gets drafted by. And I do think that whoever gets him it will be a good pick. But I don't think he is the best or the second-best tight end in the draft. At the second-best tight end, I have Kyle Pitts. Now, you could like the running back position and like the quarterback position and maybe even like the wide receiver position. You can make an argument that he is the best, and the person that I have at number 1 is the second best. It's really, you can switch him around however you want. But personally, I do think Kyle Pitts is the second best tight end in the draft. I think he's the second best tight end in college football, honestly. But he is just great tight end, really good tight end for Florida. And I think he is going to have a big year. He's going to be one of Kyle Trask's favorite targets, and I could see him as the number 1 tight end going into the draft. I think that there's someone better than him, which I'll say in a second, but Kyle Pitts is an unbelievable tight end, really good prospect, and he's going to be a guy you want on your team. But that being said, I don't think he's the number 1. At number 1, I have Pat Freiermuth from Penn State. Freiermuth, a really, really good player. He's going to be one of Sean Clifford's favorite targets this season, I do believe so. 6'5", 256 pounds. That's solid for a tight end. That's really what you would want. And he can be a big-time player for Penn State this year, and I think he can be a big-time player in the NFL, and I think he's worth a first-round pick. Definitely worth a first-round pick, and there are teams that could be looking after a tight end in the first round, or at least in the second round. If Pat Freiermuth is there and you need a tight end, I think you have to take him. He really brings something to the table that I don't think some of the other tight ends in this draft could. And he's an intriguing prospect, and he should be a really, really good player. But that is the end of the tight ends. So now I'll be moving on to the final thing, which is offensive linemen. I didn't do tackles or guards or centers. I did them all together. And it was hard because there were some that should be on this list, but just missed out. One of them was Samuel Cosmi. So I wanted to say that he's not going to be on the top 5, but he was very close. At number 5, I have Alex Leatherwood from Alabama. Right now, I don't think Alex Leatherwood is the top 5 offensive lineman for the draft, but I think he will have a good season for Alabama, and I do think he will be regarded as one of the top offensive tackles. He is already a very good offensive tackle, but I think he'll have one of his better seasons so far, and I do think he will be regarded as a top prospect on the offensive line as an offensive tackle. Honestly, I think it could be a top 10 pick with some of the teams that are picking there. They could definitely need him. I don't know if he'll go that high, but I do think he'll be a first round pick with some of the teams that are there that need a first a first-round offensive tackle that can really be a game changer, because even though you don't really think of an offensive tackle as a game changer, an offensive tackle is a very important position, whether it's a run blocking or pass blocking or both. And Alex Leatherwood brings something very nice to the table for whatever team that drafts him. So I think that would be a good pick. At number 4, I have Wyatt Davis, the guard from Ohio State. I was really considering if Wyatt Davis should be on this list or not, but I decided to put him there because he's a very, very good guard for Ohio State. He does well at protecting Justin Fields, and I do think he will be a first-round pick. In the past, in this year's draft, but in this year's draft, there was not really any great guards that were worth a first-round pick. This year, I think there are, and I think Wyatt Davis is one of them. He's just really, really good offensive guard, and he's definitely worth a first-round pick. And I would not be surprised if he goes in the first round. But that being said, at number 3, I have Walker Little from Stanford. Walker Little is a fantastic offensive tackle, and he is one of Stanford's best players, honestly. He's 6'7", which is tall, of course. He's 315 pounds. He's hard to get passing and get to the quarterback. He's a really, really good offensive guard. He does a good job protecting his quarterback. I think he's the second best offensive tackle in the draft. I could see him being a top 10 pick. I'm not sure if he's worth a top 10 pick, but I could see him being a top 10 pick. And I do think he will be a first-round offensive lineman. And I think he's the second best offensive tackle in the draft. At number 2, I have Humphrey, the center from Oklahoma. There's no doubts for me that Humphrey is the best center in this draft. Really, really great player for Oklahoma. And he's a great center, and he's proved that for the past few years in college football. Great center, and I think he will have another good year, and I think it will really show that he is worth a early pick in the draft. For whoever needs a center, this is the guy to look out for. If he's available and you need a center, he could even move to guard. But if you need a center, at whatever point in the draft, and Humphrey is on the board, he is someone you need to take. Fantastic center. And I do think he's the best interior offensive lineman in this draft. But the best offensive lineman overall, I think, is Penei Sewell. And I don't have much of a question about this one. Sewell is unbelievable as an offensive lineman. He is one of the best offensive lineman prospects I've ever seen coming out of college. He's allowed 1 sack in the past 2 seasons, which is just truly unbelievable. And I think he can have another good year. And he's a top 5 prospect. It depends who has the first pick in the draft, but I think he could be worth being the first overall pick in the draft. It just depends who is at that pick. But if it's someone that doesn't necessarily need a quarterback, Sewell could be that guy, the first pick in the draft, which might sound a little crazy, but he is that good. He is unbelievable. So hard to get by. He'll probably have another great season this year. Great player. And I do think he will be the best offensive lineman when it is time to get ready for the 2021 NFL Draft. But that is going to do it for this video. If you did enjoy, don't forget to leave a like. And if you're new around here, feel free to subscribe for more daily NFL and college football content. I do lots of football on this channel. So if you do enjoy, don't forget to subscribe. But thank you guys for watching. Also, tell me in the comment section below, who do you think are going to be some of the best players on offense for next year's draft? Tell me if there's someone you think I missed. It was hard to keep some players off this list, but I had to in the end. But once again, thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.